I once swore I would never go back to that house again. But then, one evening in early December, when my little girl looked at me with those wide, hopeful eyes and asked, "Mom, do I have grandparents?" I knew my heart couldn't stay silent any longer. My daughter Lily was only 8, still believed in magic, still thought Christmas was the time when even the most distant families could find their way back to each other. I stayed quiet for a long moment before nodding, though inside, I felt like I had just stepped over an old, rusted, thorn-covered boundary. I got divorced 3 years ago. My mother never called. My father only sent a cold one-line message. Everyone shares some blame in a breakup. I thought that made it perfectly clear. At that moment, I was no longer part of their world and they were no longer part of mine. But Lily didn't know any of that. To her, they were still grandparents. 2 people she believed would be overjoyed to see their granddaughter knocking on their door on Christmas Eve, carrying a little box of cookies and a bright smile. I didn't have the heart to take that dream from her. 3 weeks before the holiday, she asked me, "Do you think they'll like me?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I hesitated, then replied, "Of course they will." But my throat tightened, like I had just traded a piece of my truth so she could have a few days of hope. I told myself I was doing it for Lily, that maybe, just maybe, this one time they'd see her the way I do, sweet, creative, thoughtful beyond her years. Maybe I was wrong about them? We set out on the morning of December 24. I had spent the entire week preparing, scraping together every dollar from my savings, picking up extra shifts to buy Lily a red velvet dress with white lace trim and a new pair of flats. She carefully wrote out handmade cards for everyone, Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt, Uncle, each one with uneven printed letters full of love, decorated with crayon drawings. I saw her clutching them to her chest like she was afraid someone might tear them. "Do you think they'll hang my drawings on the wall?" she asked, as I tied her bow in front of the mirror. I smiled, smoothed her hair, and said, "Of course they will, sweetheart." My old SUV rolled along snow-covered roads, Christmas lights twinkling through the windows, but all I felt was a tightness in my chest. That house didn't remind me of warmth or laughter. It was a place where judgment always came softly, like a cold wind, but strong enough to freeze the heart. When we arrived, Martha, my mother, opened the door. She looked the same, hair tightly curled, lips painted deep red, a smile that never reached her eyes. "Patricia, long time no see," she said, then turned to Lily. "So this is her?" She leaned down, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder, like she was inspecting a package that had just been delivered. "I'm Lily," my daughter said brightly, her cheeks rosy from the cold. My mother replied, her eyes flicking from the salt stains on Lily's shoes to the mud-streaked hem of her dress. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The Christmas tree sparkled in the corner like something out of a home magazine, not a single ornament out of place. My father, Henry, sat in his usual armchair by the fireplace, the TV on low, holding a cup of coffee. He didn't stand, just gave a slight nod, like someone acknowledging a bank statement. "Didn't think you two would actually show," he said, his tone flat like a weather forecast. Lily shyly waved, "Hi, Grandpa." Her little hand, tucked inside a cream-colored knit glove, trembled slightly. He just looked at her. Hoppus said nothing. I stood still, my forced smile struggling not to shake. I had prepared myself for this. But nothing really prepares you for the cold indifference of people who used to be home. But Lily remained steady. She stepped forward, holding her little paper bag of cards, and whispered, "I brought gifts for everyone." Her voice was clear, like a tiny bell, soft but strangely loud in the museum-like silence of the room. I looked at her, my heart bursting, part pain, part pride, part hope. Just a sliver. She laid each card on the coffee table like sacred treasures. The one for Grandma Martha had a hand-cut pink heart glued on. Grandpa Henry's had a drawing of a Christmas tree, and underneath, 2 people holding hands. I didn't dare ask who the second figure was, but my heart sank when I realized it looked a lot like me. the daughter he once called the biggest disappointment of his life. I made one for Uncle Peter, too, Lily said, handing a card to the man sitting across the room. Peter, my younger brother, had left home at 20, only recently returning after a failed marriage. He took the card, nodded, but didn't open it. Thanks, he muttered, his voice dry. I looked at him, caught his eyes quickly turning away, as if the past was still alive in every corner of this cold, polished room. Lily didn't notice. She continued her tiny mission, walking over to my cousin Chloe, who was lounging on the sofa scrolling on her phone. When Lily handed her the card, she didn't even look up, just mumbled, "Oh, thanks, kid," before returning to her screen, the tapping of her nails louder than my breaking heart. I sat, frozen, clutching a lukewarm cup of tea, too afraid to speak. Part of me was furious, part of me afraid, but more than anything, I felt powerless. This house, these people, still the same, everything in its place yet somehow completely hollow. After she had handed out every card, Lily returned to sit beside me, her eyes still bright, whispering, "Mom, I think Grandma's about to read my card." I looked toward my mother. She held the card in her hand, but instead of opening it, she placed it down next to the crystal lamp and turned away like it was a piece of junk mail. At that moment, my father put his coffee cup down, walked toward the tree, and rummaged underneath it. He pulled out a neatly wrapped square box, shiny blue paper with a bold red ribbon. He held it up, turned to Lily, and handed it over without much emotion. "This one's for you," he said evenly. "Your name's on it." Lily's mouth dropped open. She reached out, accepting the gift with eyes that lit up like catching a falling star. A flicker of hope sparked in me. Maybe, just maybe, he had changed his mind? She sat down on the rug, carefully peeling back the tape, unfolding each crease. I could hear every tear of paper, every breath she held. As she opened the lid, the whole room seemed to pause. Then, her face froze. The smile slowly faded. Her small shoulders stiffened. Lily reached into the box, feeling around an empty space. She looked up at me, eyes uncertain. The gift box was empty. I was speechless. No note, no toy, no explanation. Just an empty box, wrapped in shiny paper and bright promises. And then my father chuckled. A short, cold, cruel sound. "Kids these days, always dreaming too big," he said, looking at Lily like she had made some ridiculous mistake. "Life doesn't hand you things just for showing up." It felt like the air had turned to stone around me. Lily hadn't cried yet, but her eyes were shimmering. I was about to speak when Chloe smirked, dropped her phone on the table, and said, with a biting tone, "She's just like her mom, always thinking being pitiful means people owe you something." I turned my head, my gaze sharp as stone. "Chloe, that's enough." "Oh, come on, did I lie?" she shrugged. "Patricia, why did you even come back? To let this poor kid believe that families are full of magic?" Lily said nothing, but I saw her hands tighten around the empty box, hugging it to her chest like she still hoped something warm, something real, might be inside. I wanted to pull her into my arms and walk away from that place forever. But I also knew, if I did, I'd be teaching her that every hurt should be buried, that silence is the answer to pain. I had lived like that for over 30 years, and I swore I wouldn't let Lily learn the same lesson. She looked up at me, her eyes wet but not breaking. I saw her swallow her tears, in a way that hurt more than if she had sobbed. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered. I still have a gift for Grandpa." And right then I knew this wasn't over, not here, not today. Lily remained still, holding the empty gift box as if it might become something else if she just waited a little longer. Her eyes no longer sparkled the way they did when she first walked into the house, but something inside them hadn't completely faded. A small flame, weak but stubborn to the end. I leaned down beside her, about to wrap her in a hug, but Lily shook her head gently. She set the box aside and reached into her coat pocket. I felt my heart tighten. When she pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper, holding it with both hands like it was a treasure, the entire room fell into silence. "Grandpa," her voice was light as air, but clear, "I have a gift for you." My father, Henry, was still holding his coffee cup. He froze for a moment, raised an eyebrow, and leaned back in his chair, his face a mixture of surprise and sarcasm. "A gift for me?" he smirked. "Hope it's not one of your mom's lectures." I clenched my hands together, trying to stay calm. But Lily didn't flinch. She stepped forward, both hands still extended, trembling slightly but steady. "I made it myself. It took 3 days to finish," Lily said. Her eyes locked on his like she was speaking to a friend, not someone who had just given her an empty box. Chloe, Peter, and my mother all turned to look. No one said a word. Henry slowly set his coffee down and reached out to take the paper. I held my breath. He unfolded it with one hand, his face showing no emotion. But as his eyes scanned the inside of the paper, something seemed to shift. I couldn't tell what it was, just that his shoulders stiffened and the familiar furrow in his brow vanished. His gaze softened, no longer sharp as usual. Instead, there was a flicker of confusion, like he was seeing something from a life long past, a memory that hadn't fully faded. No one spoke. The ticking of the wall clock suddenly became strangely loud. I couldn't see the paper from where I sat, but I saw how he looked at it, as if it had reminded him of something important he'd forgotten for too long. He stood up, still holding the paper. His steps weren't quick or firm, but there was something different in every movement. "Dad?" my mother called, surprised. He didn't answer, just walked out of the room, down the hallway toward the kitchen, and disappeared behind the oak door. No door slam, no explanation. Peter frowned. Chloe looked at me and raised an eyebrow, as if waiting for an answer I didn't have. I turned to Lily. She stood still, hands clasped, eyes still fixed on the door where Henry had vanished. "Mom," she asked softly, "did I do something wrong?" I knelt beside her, pulling her into my arms. "No, sweetheart. You did the right thing. You're braver than I am." Lily didn't say anything more. She just gave a small nod and leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't need to ask to know her heart was swirling with unanswered questions. I didn't know what my father saw in that paper. But later that evening, while I packed our things and Lily folded old wrapping paper, I found her little drawing, a duplicate she made, just in case the original got ruined. It was a crayon picture, an old man sitting at a long wooden table next to a smiling blonde girl. On the table was an apple pie, the kind my mother used to bake for the holidays, before everything turned cold. At the bottom, Lily had written in big rounded letters, "I hope you'll be happy again. Mom says you used to laugh a lot." I didn't know if he read those words, but I knew if anything could reach my father's heart, frozen for decades, it was the kind of pure sincerity Lily had given, expecting nothing in return, just hoping someone would remember how to love. And sometimes, just a simple reminder like that is enough to awaken a part of us we thought was lost forever. We didn't see Henry return to the living room that entire evening, not once. Not when everyone moved to the dining table with the usual overcooked turkey, not when my mother poured wine and told stories no one really listened to. Not even when Lily quietly picked up stray bits of wrapping paper and carefully folded them, as if trying to patch up a torn day. No one brought up what happened, no one asked how Lily felt, and no one looked at me with even a hint of empathy, as if staying silent and pretending hard enough would make the truth fade away like morning fog. Chloe stayed glued to her phone. Peter did the dishes like a machine. My mother said goodnight in her usual flat tone, then closed her bedroom door like it was any other Christmas night. But it wasn't, not at all. I looked at Lily, curled up in her blanket on the sofa, hugging the same old teddy bear she took on every trip. Her wide eyes stared into the hallway where Henry had disappeared. I didn't need to ask what she was waiting for, and as much as I wanted to comfort her, I couldn't promise he'd come back, because truthfully, I didn't believe he would. The next morning, snow still fell softly. The sun hadn't risen high yet, but I was already up, packing in silence. I didn't tell anyone we were leaving, just left a brief note on the kitchen table. Thank you for having us, Patricia and Lily. Lily didn't ask why we were leaving early. She just walked beside me quietly, her new black shoes sinking slightly into the thin snow covering the stone path. I loaded the suitcase into the trunk, opened the passenger door for her, and started the car. Lily looked back at the house through the window, her clear eyes, once untouched by disappointment, now quietly searching. We didn't talk much on the drive home, just soft music from the radio, blending with the rhythmic sound of the windshield wipers. I thought about asking her about the drawing, why she chose to make it, but I stopped myself. Some things, I realized, don't need to be put into words. She had given him the most genuine gift. One of memory, of reminder, of a piece of the past long forgotten. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I sat by the window of our small city apartment. No thick snow, no trees wrapped in sparkling lights, but it felt safe. I thought about my father, a man I had only ever seen as strict, harsh, and distant. Did he keep the drawing? Or throw it away the moment he left the room? I didn't know. Maybe I never would. Until 3 days later. When I opened the door to grab the mail like I always did, there was a small box on the doorstep. No return address, just 4 neat handwritten words. For Lily. I brought it inside, my heart racing in a strange way. Lily was coloring at the table, and her eyes lit up when I handed her the box. "Who's it from, Mom?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't know, but open it." Inside was a small wooden music box, painted brown, its details delicately hand-carved. When Lily turned the crank on the side, the melody of Edelweiss began to play. Gentle, soft, and so unexpected it gave me chills. There was a small note tucked underneath, just one messy line of handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me of her." No signature, no other clue, but I knew. I knew exactly who had written it. No need for proof, no need for confirmation. Lily held the music box to her chest, her eyes suddenly softer than usual. "Mom, do you think Grandpa remembered?" she asked quietly. I sat down beside her and nodded. "I think he did, sweetheart. You helped him remember." Lily said nothing else. She just sat there, turned the little crank once more, and listened as the melody filled the quiet apartment. I didn't know how much my father had changed, but I knew that in some small moment, Lily had reached the part of him that could still feel, still remember, still listen. And that alone made the trip worth it. Since the music box appeared, Lily seemed to have something of her own to hold on to. She didn't talk much about it, didn't ask questions, only placed the little box beside her bed every night, turned the crank once, and listened quietly. The song Edelweiss played gently, like the final breath of the day, touching the silence of our small home and softening everything heavy. I didn't press her, partly because I wanted to preserve that delicate feeling, as if touching it might break the spell, partly because I was caught in my own circle of unspoken thoughts. Someone had sent that music box. Someone had written that note. And I knew. No one but my father had that shaky, blocky, awkward handwriting. I had grown up seeing it in his books, in the notes taped to the fridge. Always that same handwriting, always that same feeling. Clear, but distant. Only this time, there was no distance. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea, still turning the note over in my mind. "Thank you for reminding me of her. Her, someone Lily had never met, but who lived in her heart through my stories. Evelyn." My mother never spoke of Evelyn. As I grew up, she was like a name crossed out of the past. My father rarely mentioned his mother either, except in passing comments at dinner when he couldn't hold back his complaints. My mother would have never put up with this lifestyle, or she taught me to endure, not to be soft like this. And yet Lily, somehow, had brought back the memory of someone this entire family had tried to forget. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, the phone rang. A strange number. I almost didn't answer, but my hand moved on its own. Patricia? A deep male voice, with hesitation. Yes, who's this? It's Peter. I was surprised. Peter? What's going on? He paused for a few seconds, then spoke quickly like he was afraid he might change his mind. Dad wants to see Lily. I nearly dropped the cup in my hand. What? He didn't explain much. Just said, if you're okay with it, bring her to the house Sunday afternoon. No one else knows. He wants to talk. I stood frozen for a while. All these years, my father had never once asked anyone to come. And now, he wanted to see Lily, the child he once handed an empty box. I said I'd think about it. I put the phone down and stared at the milk spreading across the table without moving. All that afternoon, I couldn't stop wondering, was this just another emotional trap? Would he repeat that same cruel indifference again? But then I looked at Lily. She was sitting by the window, coloring flowers on a card. It's what she always did to calm herself. And I realized maybe the right thing now wasn't shielding her by avoiding everything, but letting her face it, the way she had before. On Sunday, I drove Lily back to the old house. The snow had melted, leaving patches of ice on the sidewalk. I stopped at the end of the street, my heart full of hesitation. You ready? I asked. Lily nodded, her face more serious than usual. I think Grandpa needs someone to listen. I took her hand, warm and steady. When we stepped onto the porch, the door opened almost instantly. Not my mother, not Peter. It was Henry. No coat, no coffee in hand. Just an old man, eyes sunken, hair grayer than last time, and a face, finally, without annoyance or confusion. Hello, Lily, he said slowly. Hi, Grandpa, Lily replied, her smile small but real. He stepped back, opening the door wide. Come in. I have something I want to show you. And just like that, I knew. Something had changed. Not a fairy tale ending, but a door, gently opening. We stepped into a strangely quiet house. No sound from the TV, no clinking of dishes, no scent of food like usual. The house was still tidy, but today something felt softer, as if the old harshness had been gently wiped away by someone. Henry led Lily to the living room. I started to follow, but he turned to me, not harshly, just gently, and said, Patricia, your brother's in the backyard. Maybe you'd like to go out there for a bit? I nodded, a little surprised by how light his voice was today. Then I stepped back, letting the two of them have the room to themselves. Lily sat in the chair next to the fireplace where Henry usually read his newspaper every morning. He sat across from her, the music box placed on the table between them. Neither spoke for a while. Then Lily was the one who broke the silence. Do you listen to this song? She asked, gently turning the crank. The soft melody filled the air, each note falling like a drop of water into a still pond. Henry nodded, his eyes fixed on the spinning lid. I have. And I've kept it by my bedside these past few nights. Lily smiled. Mom said Grandma Evelyn liked this song. He took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. She did. She used to sing it while folding laundry. Her voice wasn't great, but I always thought it was the most beautiful sound in the world. The room went quiet again. Lily said nothing, just reached into her small backpack beside her. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper, the edges slightly wrinkled from being held too long. Then she handed it to him, her hand slightly trembling, but her gaze steady. This is the original, she said. The one I gave you on Christmas was a copy. I wanted to keep this one. He took it, unfolding each crease carefully, as if something delicate and precious lay inside. When the drawing fully opened, I saw him pause. From the window I could see part of the picture. 3 people, hand in hand. Henry, tall and broad, holding hands with a woman with curly hair and bright eyes. Evelyn. And between them, Lily, her face lifted in a smile. At the bottom of the drawing, a simple line of text read, "I hope one day you'll smile again, because Mom said Grandma used to make you laugh a lot." I saw Henry lean back in his chair, his eyes still on the paper, but this time there was no coldness or confusion, just stillness, and something quietly breaking behind his eyes. "She's been gone 10 years, he said, his voice raspy. "Since then, I haven't drawn, haven't sung, haven't told stories, I just kept going." Lily tilted her head. "But you still remember her." "I do." He smiled faintly, a crooked smile, as if surprised by the sound of it. "But I forgot how to show it. You reminded me." A long pause followed. Then Lily asked softly, "Do you ever think, if she could see you now, she'd be sad?" The question made Henry go silent, his hand on the paper tensed. Then relaxed. "Maybe she would," he said, quieter than a whisper. "And that's what scares me the most." I turned away, feeling the sting behind my eyes. Henry placed the drawing back on the table, right beside the music box. "Do you want to take this back?" he asked. Lily shook her head. "No, you keep it. I think she'd like being near you." Again, silence filled the room. But this time, it wasn't cold. It felt like a soft blanket wrapping around two souls, finally reaching each other after too many years apart. Before we left, Henry walked us all the way to the door. There were no empty words, just eyes that no longer looked away, and a hand that gently touched my shoulder for the first time as he whispered, "She's like her mother, but better." I nodded, unsure what to say. Lily turned back and waved. "Goodbye, Grandpa. Next time, I'll draw more for Grandma." He smiled, a real smile, and in that moment I realized, some gifts are never wrapped in shiny paper or tied with red bows. They are memories, hope, and quiet reminders that even the most weathered hearts can be stirred, if someone kind enough dares to reach in. A week after that afternoon, as Lily sketched in the soft golden sunlight spilling through our kitchen window, I received an envelope. Unsealed, no return address, only my name written neatly in handwriting I could never mistake. That same handwriting, awkward, firm, as if the writer was unfamiliar with expressing feelings in words, let alone capturing them in ink and paper. I stood still at the doorstep for a long time, holding something that felt both feather-light and heavy as stone. As I opened the letter, the music from Lily's little box echoed in my mind. Edelweiss, now more than a melody. A bridge between now and something long asleep in the past. There were only 3 lines inside. "Your mother was right about you. That little girl is wonderful. I hope you're doing okay." No greeting, no apology, no sign this was a beginning or an end. But that made it all the more powerful in its quiet way. I read it 3 times, each word ringing like an echo of something I had longed for. Not forgiveness, but recognition. He didn't say sorry, but he wrote, "That little girl is wonderful." And for me, that was enough to crack the wall I'd built over the years. Just enough for light to come through, even if only a sliver. I placed the letter in the drawer beside my bed, where I keep my most treasured things. A note Lily wrote in preschool saying she loved me more than toast and strawberries. A birthday card from my grandmother when I turned 18. And now, this short note from a man who never knew how to show love, but finally spoke. That night, as I read Lily her bedtime story, she turned the music box's crank and looked up at me. "Mom," she asked softly, "do you think Grandpa is still sad?" I looked into her eyes, still as clear as that early winter morning when she stood in his living room, her hands trembling as she handed over a paper gift to a man she had only just met. "I think he's learning not to be," I said with a gentle smile. "Because of you." Lily didn't reply, She just held the music box to her chest the way children hold on to secrets, something warm adults may never fully understand. Since then, we haven't heard more from Henry. No calls, no texts, no sudden appearances like in the movies. But every weekend, a small package would arrive, never with a return address. The first was a pad of colored drawing paper, the next a set of high-quality watercolor pencils, with a note, "For your next pictures." Another time, it was a photo book of national parks Evelyn once loved visiting. And most recently, a hand-carved wooden picture frame, empty, unmarked. But I knew right away, it was meant for the Christmas drawing Lily gave him. Lily never asked why he sent them. She simply hung the picture by her desk and whispered, "Grandpa's smiling again, Mom." I know it. I can't say for sure he truly smiled, but I know he's starting to remember. And that's the beginning of every change. The story between my father and me isn't a reconciliation. I don't expect a long conversation, a warm dinner, or overdue hugs. But when I read those few short lines, I understood he finally saw me. Not as a rebellious daughter or a burden, but as a mother raising a child who knows how to love, forgive, and create change with nothing more than kindness. Lily didn't just change him, she changed me too. She reminded me that sometimes what we need isn't victory or resolution, but simply space to be heard. A soft acknowledgement, light as air, yet strong enough to ease even the longest winters. And in our little apartment in the city, with no grand tree or church bells ringing, I knew that Christmas, for the first time in years, truly touched my heart, not because of what we received, but because of what we had the courage to give. Someone once asked me why I brought Lily back to that house, a place filled with heavy memories, a place I once swore never to return to. I didn't have a clear answer then, but now, looking back, I think I understand. I brought her back not to reopen old wounds, not to seek approval from the man who once made me feel invisible in my own home. I brought Lily back because she needed to see that the world isn't only made of beautiful corners. She needed to know that some people are not easy to love, not easy to reach, and not always easy to forgive. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Lily never wanted revenge. She didn't demand an apology or expect Henry to change. She didn't need praise. All she wanted was to give a genuine gift, a reminder of something once beautiful, and maybe still alive in someone long forgotten. When she gave him that drawing, simple as it seemed, filled with memory, hope, and unconditional affection, I saw what I hadn't been able to do for years, reach the remaining humanity in a man I thought time and loss had turned to stone. Henry didn't change overnight. He didn't become a warm grandpa or suddenly bring ice cream or tell fairy tales. But he listened in silence, sent small gifts, and most importantly, he showed he still felt. For someone like him, that alone was a big step. I remember his eyes when Lily said she hoped he'd smile again one day. For a second, I saw the man he used to be. The one who carried me on his shoulders in summer evenings, taught me how to toast bread without burning it, sat under the porch as my mother played the piano. That man never disappeared. He had just been buried under time, unspoken anger, and disappointment no one dared to name. And Lily, with a child's sketch and a simple line of hope, brought that memory back. Maybe that's why I believe now more than ever that kindness isn't weakness. It's the softest, most enduring kind of strength, a quiet bravery that doesn't shout or slam fists, but acts at just the right moment, from a pure heart. I don't know how Lily will remember that Christmas in the years to come. Maybe she'll think of the empty box, the heavy silence, the cold stares. But I hope what stays with her is the way Henry looked at her drawing, or the moment he wrote his first note to her. That's what's worth holding on to. Because sometimes it's not what we receive that makes something magical. It's what we're brave enough to give. I never wrote back to Henry, not because I was angry or didn't appreciate what he'd done, but because I knew some things don't need to be said. They've already been understood, accepted, and maybe are quietly growing into something else, slow but real. Lily still turns the music box each night before bed, but lately she doesn't just listen. She's started to hum along. Her voice is light as a breeze, off-key at times, but still she sings. And every time she does, I feel a little more at peace. I know my daughter will grow up without needing the walls I once built to protect myself. She won't learn to stay silent when she's hurt, or believe that she has to be tough to survive. She'll know that gentleness is a powerful choice, and kindness is a silent but sharp kind of strength. My story with my father might not be finished, but thanks to Lily, it's taken a different path. A new door has opened. Not wide, but just enough to let the light in. And sometimes just one ray of light is all it takes to illuminate a road we thought was forgotten. The story of Lily and me has shown me that in real life, what changes people isn't logic, but unconditional sincerity. A small gesture, a gift born from pure affection, can soften even the most hardened hearts. Kindness doesn't ask for anything in return, but it holds the power to shift the impossible. And sometimes all it takes is one child who believes in goodness to make the whole world just a little more gentle. What do you think of Patricia and Lily's story? Do you believe kindness can reach even the coldest hearts? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.